We'll be talking them through, and I'm gonna get serious now. I don't think that's possible, but I'll be talking through, or Matt will be talking through our new product update with search and reporting capabilities, some of the reasons why. Matt, a little bit about him, CTO. You've been here close to what, 3 years since the inception of Blumira?
Yeah, it's about 3 years since the inception of Blumira. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
Cool. And the search and reporting, did it come about because customers were interested in it or wanted some functionality beyond a query?
Yeah, it came from two places: the need to be able to get to data, and really more the need to be able to get to data when there's large amounts of data that you're sending. So if you're sending Windows data and you're sending Cisco Umbrella data, they're going to be wildly different sets of data. So how can we simplify that and make it easier to find was largely the goal here.
Sweet. And I'm Patrick, VP Operations. I joined in January previously at Devo in Cisco. Was there for about 8 years. So we'll hop in. Some of the things we're going to talk about is why the need for new search and reporting. What problems does the new search and reporting address for customers? And then some of the different top use cases. And Matt, if you can't tell, is one of the most detail-oriented people I know. He's given us real use cases with Active Directory, user logins failing, privilege changes, Windows Azure, Umbrella. So we'll see what we can get through today.
Yeah.
And if you have other things you want to see that aren't on the list, just throw it at them. Yeah, or we can schedule some time outside of it, right? So, sweet. So a few things, like just observations, like why search and reporting. One of the key things is providing something that's easy to use for our customers. And talking through, having canned reporting that you can just click and use, adjust times accordingly, schedule reporting, and just making it easy. And there's a lot behind that around their security in that. And then there's also compliance and audit. Or maybe you just want to show, the executive team that the IT and security team actually does something. Those are all, valid reasons from a why you would want something there. I'm eating marshmallows. Seriously, I'll try not to put my mouth right now. Yeah, so if we're talking about the comparison of like SIM versus searching versus reporting, and Matt, I think this is something I've seen is like the complexity of the SIM space and what you need to do to essentially search for something has traditionally been pretty complicated, right?
Yeah. There's some normalization processes, but you're still talking about a pretty big effort to make sure that you're getting what you want of that data and finding what's most important in that data.
And essentially most products, or a lot of them, require you to understand a unique query scheme language.
Right.
Which the reality is like most people probably don't know how to do that.
Yeah, or don't have time to learn it.
Yeah, don't have the desire to learn. Yeah, or time, right? So I got to say hi to someone that hopped on, Jim. I haven't talked to him in a long time, and it's good to see him on the webinar. And then as we move to like, Blumira search, talk a little bit about what the difference is there, and then the reporting side. Matt's typing away. Sorry. I was asking about searching as it relates to search and then reporting, right?
Yeah. So the big part for us and why we decided to connect the two, and you'll see that as we move forward, and we're going to keep improving on what you see here, is that realistically searching and reporting are directly connected to each other, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to pivot from I'm searching for data, I'm getting data how I want it to look, and then I want to be able to save how that looks, refer to it later, and build it into a scheduled report. So it's a nice flowing process that makes it just easier for you to access that data, and makes it easier for people if they have something unique they want to be trying to track, like we only care about event ID 1000. So like when there are issues with applications running on this certain machine, it's really easy to hunt down that data compared to a situation where you're having to figure out the query language, figure out what columns you care about, that kind of thing.
Sweet. So simplifying, making it easier. Hey, while we're talking about this, I do have a poll I'm going to kick off. so that we can survey what people or use cases they're most often using reporting for or desire to. I'll launch the poll. The choices are security audit, compliance audit, threat hunting, management reporting, or to track or stalk employee. No, I'm kidding. Track employees, right? So I just opened that poll up. We'll keep it open for a few minutes if everyone can respond. We'll see how people are using reporting today. And then the overall, right, goal of SIM itself, right, which is log collection, and then essentially taking what's collected and doing detection, right, and ideally then being able to respond to the things that you detect out of that. And I think as a reality is like talking to so many customers all the time or prospective customers. Most of the time, a SIM might not even get to full log collection and centralization, let alone providing security value, right? And Matt, I think that's that's something constantly seen across the industry with some of the traditional solutions in place.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's there's a differentiation there, so it's important to make sure that that's handled appropriately.
Cool. So on the getting down to the value-added detections, alerting on indicators of lateral movement, compromise, those sorts of things. That's kind of the more advanced stages, and a lot of times the challenge is complexity of product to get to success there. And so mainly it's a matter of trying to get to a state of properly doing detection and protecting your attack surface. So we'll hop before we do hop into the demo that you're going to provide, Matt. I did get a lot of people responding to the survey. About 50% said security audit was the primary way or reason that they use reporting for. Compliance with 33%, and then 17% said threat hunting. Okay. And nobody cared about management reporting or tracking employees. And I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, people care. In my experience, people care about tracking employees those few times that HR comes to you and says, "What is this?" And hopefully you don't get that request very often.
I've been there myself, right? And this can happen with remote work too. It's like I'm never a fan of tracking people's activity, but like after a month of someone telling me they do something and there's something not happening.
Sure, you start to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, sometimes you got to talk to IT and be like, hey, did this person, in this case, it was like, did this person even log into the VPN at that time?
Right.
And what they found was it had been 3 weeks before they logged into the VPN.
Yep.
And legitimately, every day we talked, they said they were doing the activities, sure, and it required VPN access, right? So I threw that one out there as like a
it's a necessary
more general
sometimes.
one.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's definitely similar to what we're seeing, and I'll jump into this here as well, that people largely focus on the security and compliance side, and then things start to fall up beyond it. And realistically, as a lot of people who've dealt with SIMs are aware of, it can be a bear to use classic SIM to do proper threat hunting. And as we move forward over the next few quarters, Blumira has some ideas on this as well. So let me share my screen for y'all.
It's all you. Take over. I'll manage the chat and Q&A. Please ask your questions, comments. Everything's appreciated. Hi, Brian. I'm just going to call out all the people that are on here.
Alrighty, let me log in. We'll start from the beginning here. Hopefully y'all can see my screen. Get myself situated. Alrighty. So.
And we are going to have a new UI update soon.
We will, yeah.
It'll look a little prettier.
Yeah, so just FYI, we are working on generally updating the interface to be closer to what you're going to see inside of this new search area, and so better interaction, better use of real estate, and more information on the finding side. Continuing to improve the stuff that you're about to see inside of the new search area. Just continuously kind of trying to find ways to make this just easier and more straightforward for everyone that uses Blumira is kind of our big overarching goal, especially through 2020, to make sure that you're getting what you want out of this area. So again, while I'm going through this demo, if you're a current Blumira user, either way, If there's ever a situation where you're going through this and either it's not working or there's something else you think would be super cool if it was there, we're always open to ideas, always open to how you could see that data being used inside your environments, that kind of thing. So let me kick it off here. So this is the new search beta for Blumira. It essentially is the central repository for all of the data that flows into Blumira for your organization. In this case, this is the Blumira account, so the data sets are going to be slightly wonky, but that's okay. We can make it work, not a big deal. And one of the parts that I wanted to mention is just kind of where we are, what we're seeing on the screen, and how this all kind of fits together. And some of this will get filled out as we go through the demos today. Everything I show today is going to be live data. I didn't make any of this up, so it should be close to what you would expect to see. So,
hey Matt.
Yes.
And I know this might throw you off. Is there any way to like zoom in a little bit with resolution?
How's that?
Oh, yeah. Does everyone like that better?
I have crazy high resolution, so I apologize.
Yeah, it's good, but like, and this is some of the things improvement is like, some clearer text, right? It's just a little bit harder to see on the video itself.
Not a problem at all. Hopefully that's better for everyone.
Totally throwing him off. If there's any mistakes, it's my fault.
So just to kind of step through what you're seeing on this page, and some of these I'll be talking about these sections in more depth as we move forward. So I'm just going to touch on them at this point. So we have the scheduled reports, which I will also go through in a few minutes here, which is allowing you to generate scheduled reports that get emailed to you or your teams on a regular basis, which again, I'm going to go through this in a more depth in a few minutes. We have saved searches that are relevant to your organization. So you can build searches, you can generate them. Like this was a phishing campaign that I had put up for myself called Redfish Bluefish. So you can go and you can build these save queries for yourself or save searches for yourself and make sure that you or your team can always refer back to them. And we also have these global searches, which are broad kind of compliance-based searches or interesting-based searches that are for your organizations to use to get information out of your data sets. And it could range from Active Directory to firewalls to specific firewalls. It varies in regard to what you're looking for, and we're always adding more to this. So if there's something you ever want to see, like we'll be adding a set of ASA AnyConnect and ASA VPN stuff to here in the next week. So anything like that, Blumira is always happy to do more in regard to giving better visibility into data within the environment. So we want to make it as easy as possible for organizations to kind of glean that information out of their environments. So I'm going to start with where we do recommend people start. And there is this, which is kind of the start of the process. I call it a wizard, although I've been told that wizard is not a term that's been used since 1998 or so.
Hey, I'm going to call it Gandalf. No, I'm kidding. I'm the one that made that joke. I was like, isn't wizard like the Mr. Clippy thing? Yeah. we should build Mr. Clippy in the product. Yeah. No, hey, there is one other thing I want to add in the product, which is like cheat codes. So like we can use the Contra cheat code where like if you're in the product and you go up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, start. Like then it does. All right, sorry. Bad product ideas by Patrick. But like, yeah, you get more lives, I guess. I don't know. More reports.
More reports. There you go. More reports. You get all the beta reports.
I like it. All right, the wizard.
All right. So I'm going to go back to the wizard, but I'm going to start with kind of like basic compliance needs, basic security needs, getting visibility into your Active Directory environments. So that's where a lot of organizations kind of start out as to, well, we want to make sure that we have visibility, and really more importantly, especially in audit situations, you're going to be asked, do you have visibility into this? Do you have reporting associated with these things? So I'm just going to kind of go down this list and kind of show what people are seeing, what can be seen, how we kind of position some of these queries or searches that are available to you by default for your data. And this one, for example, is looking at, and let me just open this up. It's looking at, looks like the last week of data. And I will go over all this throughout this, so don't worry, you're not missing anything. It's counting the amount of data that it's seeing over that week. So here we're seeing that this server, so it's the actual machine, which is the $ sign is there, is authenticating to this. It's authenticating to itself, so it's probably UAC or permission call here. And what we can do for situations where you want to start moving this data down, or you want to start doing some more complex modifications of this data, and this is a good example for that kind of thing. We expose a number of ways for you to filter down this data. So I'm gonna say, all right, that's fine. I don't really care about UAC. I don't really care about services that are triggering authentication events, because it doesn't matter to me in this case. So I'm gonna come in here, and you don't have to remember this. You can always ask. I'm happy to send this stuff over. I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna write a regex that I don't want any type of users that end in a $. So I don't want to know any of those system level authentication that's happening. And then research. I'm going to look at that data set again. And now we can see actual local services that are triggering. We can see named accounts starting to get triggered, and we can see actual user logins associated with what's happening in that environment. And one of the other benefits of this setup is that you can start building out the table as you want it. So you can start saying, all right, well, I want to pull this information out. I want to add that. I want to start ordering it. And I'm like, all right, well, I want to see what Aberlin has done, where she's logged in, and over that time period. And you could then say, all right, this is interesting. This is helpful. I'm able to get what I want to from here, and start to pivot around and say, all right, well, I want to actually look at what, I'm going to keep using Amanda as an example here. I'm going to look at what Amanda Berlin is doing more specifically. So if you just search, you'll get that group count. You'll see, all right, we still see 12. But if you come in here and we drop off this, and then we add in the timestamp column, then you get into a nice point where you start seeing more detailed information about those logins. So when they're actually happening, the timestamp that it's occurring, associated data, and then you can start adding more information associated with them. So what I'm trying to show is that these saved queries, saved searches, the global searches, what they give you is the ability to kind of start and then start filtering from there, or just use them for compliance purposes, use them for whatever is needed within your environment, essentially. And then you can filter them down using the filters to make life more straightforward and structured for your organization. So let me hop over to another example. Let's go with creative users. This is another one of those things that like PCI would care about. A lot of them would care about because they want to know if you're tracking who's getting created. Let's look at the last 30 days of data, because it doesn't look like there were any in the last week. It looks like we have a number being created by perhaps some sort of script, because there's a repeating nature here. And you can see that the user and domain have already been pulled out, so it's easy to see what's going on here. You can filter these. We can see that there was a lot of this one user being created. And what that does do is that you could then pivot over to what we were just talking about, and you could change this over to group that data, and then you could start doing counts and seeing if there was any differentiation between these device names, for example. We can look at this and see it was largely all DC1, but it allows you to say in a bigger environment, all right, I can see that this user has been created across this many DCs, something weird is happening here. And it allows you to kind of work through that process. And of course, it's helpful for compliance purposes, because you can really quickly and easily bring up these reports and present them to your auditor, instead of having to fight with like, oh, well, I have to figure out how this whole thing is fitting together, and make sure it's working how you want it to. I'm going to come back to the failed user login, because I actually have a good example narrative for y'all that I'd like to show you, but let's do privileged groups. So this would be an example of, let me go back in time, because I can pretty much guarantee it's not happening constantly. Let's look at last month. And this is a good example of situations where you have users being added to domain admin groups. So that's what you're seeing right here. We're seeing in this example, the administrator user upper and administrator user lower, adding this user, HP Lovecraft, to the domain admin group. And this is one of those situations where Blumira is going to alert you when these kind of things happen, especially in cases of domain admin coming up. But for compliance purposes, for reporting purposes, you're going to get asked to make sure that you can at least report on these things. And you can give a list of findings, of course, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's also helpful to be able to get those either weekly reports, monthly reports, or just be able to bring this up and say, hey, we have this, here's how Blumira helps us get that information out. And then you can filter down, of course, if you have a deep need to get any deeper down inside of that. So that's a lot of that kind of compliance stack inside of Windows and Active Directory. There are a number of other ones in here that help with that. like explicit credentials, like service logins, that kind of thing, users being deleted, security-enabled group modification, user lockouts can be super useful for investigating what's going on in your environment, especially on like a daily reporting basis. But they all kind of culminate in that helpful compliance need as well.
Hey, one thing to, just to promote anybody that's an existing customer on the webinar, right? You might look at your logs and be like, I'm not seeing these things, right? Like it's not populating. The other thing I would encourage you to do is make sure that you download the Logmira GPO template, because that's going to give more visibility in the logs. So actually more information is populated from Windows and DCs. So yeah, I just want to highlight like some of the examples we're showing here are only available if you change your Windows logging, because by default it doesn't collect verbose logs, which the whole purpose of Logmira is to make that easy to do.
Yes.
So a little bit of a tangent, but I thought, hey, there's some customers on here. Even if you're not a customer, you should download Logmira for free.
Yes.
And get it enabled anyway. Right?
Yes, yeah, we are strong believers in robust and verbose GPOs that allow you to get the proper information out of your Windows environments. It can be DCs, it can be actual servers, it doesn't, or even endpoints. But if you want to be able to detect things like PowerShell being used inappropriately, if you want to be able to detect things like C-script being used for attacks, you want visibility that you need to modify those machines to get that visibility with the GPO. So please check out Logmira. It's free. We also recommend Sysmon to layer on top of that as well. It'll give you a ton of visibility, even if you have a very good endpoint client. There are situations where that kind of detection is going to see something before CrowdStrike does, for example, just because of the nature of the position of that data and how things like Blumira or other SIMs can look at that data depending on how you configure it.
And the customer on the chat says it definitely adds value. So we're not lying to you. Thanks, Brian.
All right, so I'm gonna kind of jump around in a few different types of data, just kind of show people how we filter things down and look at data and how it can be available to you within here. And I'm going to go through the wizard, quote unquote. So we'll start with antivirus, and here we have some Sophos Central data from the Sophos Endpoint Agent. We're gonna, I went too fast, so let me step back here. And one of the benefits to, as I had mentioned, is that we pick the columns for you that we think will be populated associated with that type. Now, depending on the actual event associated with that data source, the one or two of the columns may not have data, but the majority of them will be. And that's to simplify the effort with digging out information from an environment, just because we want to give you that starting point to get you moving forward. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure that we're giving you a set of columns that are useful. And we'll go into that a little deeper as we move forward, but I just want to kind of step on that and show you real quick. So I'm going to do a pretty long query. I'm going to go from March to August. I'm going to do a few of these. I'm going to talk about this more later, but one of the things I just want to touch on as we move through this is that the way the Blumira handles your data is that we store it basically all hot. There's not cold storage, there's not waiting. There's not a situation where if you want to run a long query, you're going to have to wait like 40 minutes because we have to find the data and load it in, and then we'll tell you. It's all hot for as long as your retention period is, and I'll touch on that again as we move forward as well. So we see a bunch of Sophos data. Looks like some guy named Owen, probably me, who was testing, ran a bunch of viruses, and it looks like they were detected and cleaned. So let's kind of filter this down, because it's not, I mean, it's usable, but there's a fair amount of data here, and it would be easier if we started to filter this down. So let's kind of go through that filter process. And let's look at, we want to look at only things that are servers. And we also only want to look at things that are malware. So we just want to see where there was malware on servers. We don't want to see anything else. We care about our servers in this case. Maybe we want to make a saved report associated with this. And then we can start building generation around that. So we can see that there were a number of detections, and they were all cleaned up as well, which is always good to see. Here's CryptoWall, for example, which is cleaned up and detected, which it looks like there were no actual finalized infections, which is always good. This is, of course, helpful from a logging and auditing point of view to review this and make sure we're seeing detections are being cleared up. Great. It also allows things to be a little easier if you have a situation where you're worried that one host is being infected a lot, which this is a great example of that. This is all one host, server host, being hit with these issues. That would, of course, be an issue for concern. So I want to kind of show you, because I haven't done this yet, show you how saving a search works. So let's say we're going to save this, and this is server malware detections. And that then allows us to kind of re-leverage this however we want to and start to rework it. So we have it in here. We can refer to it whenever we want. We can bring it up and then reverse engineer it and save it as something else if we want to. But let's show the scheduled report so I can I'm going to do this a few times, but I want to give people kind of a feel for how this works. So we're going to do a SoPost server malware, and then we're going to pull that up. There it is. And I'm going to email it to myself, but you could have anything else. I mean, you can have, it's all comma separated, so you can do reports at Blumira. You can do whatever you want to do in regard to who gets this. And then you can pick between JSON or CSV for the output. We'll do a CSV. And let's say every week, I want to know on Monday, I want to know what the previous week's server detections were. So I'm just going to add this report in. So now every week, every 7 days, I'm going to get notified as to what the server malware detections were. And then I can pull these into Excel, I can pull these into Tableau, I can just look at the CSV, or I could come back to this report on here. And then I can start to validate, all right, here's what happened. They were all cleaned up, great. I'm happy with where this is right now for my AAV and SOPHOS detections, that kind of thing. And then you can always very easily come back here and say, all right, I know what I want to look for. I want to look at my SOPHOS server malware detections and then bring it back up. So that's kind of that streamlined saving process that we provide. And then here you go, there's that data. So I'm going to move on to the next one. But let me know if you have any questions as I go through this. I'm going to go to cloud applications. Now, we get a lot of people that are, for obvious reasons, moving to the cloud, especially in the days of COVID. There's a big move
to the cloud. I think that commercial, right? It's like, it was like 10 years before its time. They should re-release it.
Well, yeah, they should, because who's shooting the commercials now? So you may
So,
as well release it.
do you think we can like buy that copyright and Blumira to the cloud?
We can try. So,
all right.
as Patrick very just stated, everyone is moving to the cloud, and a lot of people are moving to Azure Office 365 because it's a natural lift. It's easy to say, well, we're all on-prem AD, we're going to move to hybrid Azure AD, and then we're going to move to Office 365 or one of the two, and then we're going to start putting stuff into Azure. And for those who are in Azure, you're pretty well aware that Azure, like most cloud platforms, have their own kind of insanity that kind of gets rolled into it. So I'm going to go over this Azure administration stuff real quick. I'm also going to show how this column selection stuff works. So
hey, you know what? On the topic of cloud transformation, like pre-COVID, everyone was like, we have a 3 to 5 year project to move to the cloud or move a lot of apps to cloud, and they've been saying that for 3 to 5 years, right? All of a sudden, it was like, oh shit. And now it's like, oh, we did it in like 2 months. Like the project's done and it works. Like, it's just like, just rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Oh yeah, it's all Band-Aid ripping when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, dude, us as humans overcomplicate IT, right?
We do tend to.
Security.
For sure.
It's good. Or the leadership team does, right?
It's usually leadership teams, for sure, yeah. So I wanted to kind of just show this process here. And part of the reason why we do what we do here is going to be pretty well shown within the step. So here's some example columns for Azure administration. I have a pending update to these columns, which I didn't apply because I wanted to show what pain would happen, and the update will be applied before the end of the day. But I wanted to show what pain would happen in a situation where you're looking for a specific set of data and another sim where you wouldn't even know the columns, but at least in here you can know the columns that you're looking for that are pertaining to that type. So I want to add 3 additional columns, these ones that are picked here. So I'm going to scroll down here. I know which ones I'm looking for, so I can just do this. I want to add the identity column. I want to add the operation name column. And I want to add the resource column. So that'll give me some additional columns to select while I'm going through this process. And by the end of the day, those will be default anyways. But I just wanted to kind of show you how that works. I want to look at last month's data to see what kind of Azure administration actions. Actually, it doesn't need to do that. We'll do last 30 days. to look kind of Azure administration happened within that environment. And so Azure administration, for those of you who use Azure, is every single action that takes place within the Azure environment, from creation of VPCs to deletion of VMs to modification of VMs. Everything that happens lives within that Azure administration kind of structure. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to filter it down, because this is great. I can see that there were some services that were written, but what I really care about today is I care about things that were deleted. I want to know what VMs or what was deleted just generally within that environment. And I'm going to kind of cheat. I'm going to do a regular expression, but all I'm going to do is, for that regular expression, I'm just going to put delete. And it's what that's going to do now is it's going to iterate through those options, and it's start to pull them out. And it's going to allow us to do a really quick and simple gathering of all the machines that were deleted and by who. And that the who is wrapped up inside of this messy Azure fun, which we'll clean up our parsing as we move forward. But you can see that me, M. Warner, deleted this machine on the 10th, it looks like. But I deleted a number of other machines, it looks like, on the 10th as well. And what this really allows you to do is kind of quickly and easily start to dig data out of here. You can quickly and easily see that we know that it was deleted based off this. You could also even drop that whole process and say, you know what, I don't want to know that. I want to know in the identity, I want to know anywhere else that M. Warner did some stuff, even though if that identity feels a bit of a messy mess. And that still gives you that delete, but it also gives you any other actions associated with M. Warner, which looks like I just deleted things in the last 30 days, which is understandable. But we could, of course, go back even further and make larger queries to say, like, all right, well, I want to look at even more sets of data to see what else has Matt Warner done during that time period within the Azure administration environment. And it allows you to kind of quickly and easily dig data out of those environments and make calls for what's happening in there as well. So that's sure.
We have a question I just want to ask. Someone asked, is Azure Integration?
Oh,
someone's trying to call me, so it kind of cut out for a sec there.
Yeah,
but yeah, this Azure integration is impressive. Any limitations on data we can receive?
On data, there are very few. So we are working on improving / expanding out our Office 365 integration. We currently ingest all Office 365 API data. The Azure data all flows through the Azure Event Hub. And really all you have to do, if you're a current Blumira customer, please check out the Azure Integration help desk or help center page. All you have to do is set up the Event Hub and then set up Azure monitoring and set up the Azure AD monitoring. If you use Azure AD, it's a very simple process, and there are essentially no limitations in regard to what we can bring in. If you use Defender ATP, that can also flow through Event Hub. Event Hub is essentially Azure's kind of central point of data, and we kind of just feed off of that. So it simplifies setup for you, and it simplifies setup for us, because all we need to do is hook into that one spot. Office 365 has separate integration, but no limitations, generally speaking. We're continuing to improve our Azure and Office 365 integrations throughout this entire year. It's one of our top goals. So if there's anywhere that if you're a current Blumira customer, or you would like to become a Blumira customer, if there's anywhere that you see interest in the data that you'd like to get to us or you want to see, we can definitely find it for you. There are actually 7 different types of Azure data that we parse, and that ranges from Azure security, so the security compliance alerts, to Azure administration, as you see here, to pure Azure monitoring. If you use Azure monitoring, those can all come through here. And we can either build findings for you for them, or you can do a nice kind of saved report and be like, all right, well, every morning I want to be told if someone deleted a VM. I want to be told if there was an Azure monitoring event. I want you to tell me what kind of data is coming out. Because one of the benefits of this structure is that it will email you if there is no data as well. So you aren't surprised if you have a day with no data. You're just told, hey, no one deleted anything today. You aren't told nothing. Because the nothing is the bad part of reporting. If you have a scheduled report and there's no data comes out of it, and it's just kind of like, well, sorry. Yeah, what's the point at that point? So you need to be told, like, hey, nothing happened this day, which is good.
Hey, Matt. So Adam asked, are there benefits to the Blumira search over the native 365 search via protection.office/unified audit log? That's a very specific question, Adam.
So, I mean, the best way for me to describe that is the data is going to be better utilized in some regards. So, on our side, if there's public IPs involved, it's going to be enriched with GeoIP more readily. On the Office 365 side, more than likely, their search can give you more in-depth information, but what they can't give you is enriched data associated with who's logging into what and where they're logging in from in regard to GeoIP that we're enriching with that data. I will say the power on the Azure side is more so because we can extract all that data out of Event Hub and present it to you in a more structured and robust way than basically like, here's a 1,000-character blob of JSON. We can give that to you in generally a more structured way. Office 365, I mean, Microsoft has done a good job with parts of their product. There's a reason that Azure Sentinel is crazy complex. There's a reason that searching inside of Microsoft can be complex. We've tried to simplify that, but I will say parts of our search are significantly better, and then Microsoft does them better in some other areas as well.
Hey, one thing I would say there too, just highlighting if you're an existing customer, I think there's some new potential customers on. For existing customers, go to blumira.com/ it says documentation at the top of the Blumira page. We're now publishing most of our documentation publicly. There's still some behind Zendesk, right? Beyond what's there, but the goal is to make that much more accessible. Like, take a moment to check that out, because like our integration from even when I started in January has gone up like 3x. I think we cover over 100 different log types at this point. So that's something to look at, you know, from a customer perspective. Like, you're able to leverage all those integrations, and the more you do with us, right, the more valuable it is to us. In serving up and providing that security value, right? Yeah. And we're not licensed in a way necessarily where we're nickel and diming on data volume. And so that's really the key there, is helping our customers be successful across that. The last thing I would say regarding Sentinel, because I have a lot of experience with deployments and customers that have tried to deploy or get down a path, is on average, what I'm hearing is it's still a 6 to 18 month project with third-party consultants and a ton of people to manage the thing. So like, it's pretty deceiving in that, like, under the as advertised is pretty much the equivalent of Splunk. Under the hood, it's pretty much the equivalent of Splunk, which means it's going to take you a ton of resources to deploy. Whereas literally our value proposition, time to value, is the fact that, like, within under an hour to 2 hours nowadays, we can pretty much deploy full stack across all technology within the customer's environment and surface threats and actions to respond, right? So just want to highlight there, when we're talking about Azure and some of the different opportunities or options you have, why you might choose one thing over the other.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very good point. The time to value here is, for Blumira, is huge. It's one of the things we push on. We want to make it as easy as possible. And on that topic, I will also note, you can access our information here, and really more importantly, and on the corporate website, as Patrick said, if there's a situation where you're not sure what you're looking for and you're not finding it, all you have to do is click on that button and contact us, shoot us a message. It notifies the security team immediately, and the person you're talking to isn't just some random person that doesn't know really how computers work. It's going to be a security analyst that knows your data, that knows the data. They'll be able to get you what you're looking for, instead of a, like, well, I don't know, maybe look harder. They're going to be able to tell you what you need to find for what you're looking for and what you're looking to find. Let's see, where do I want to do next? I'll just do this real quick, and I just want to do this really more as an example, because I already did a long search. So we'll go back to the beginning of the year just to kind of do a very long one. And then I'm really only going to show this, and this is Umbrella. This is our Umbrella integration. There's only a few in here. But I wanted to touch on this as kind of a note to say that Blumira can retain any amount of data that you want us to retain for any amount of period that you want it to retain. So, for example, we do a year by default for as many compliance requirements have. If you need to store more data than a year, if you want to store multiple years of data, it's not a problem. As you just saw, I just searched through 8+ months of data. It only takes a few seconds. More data you send us won't slow it down. It doesn't make it slower. It doesn't reduce the responsiveness of the site. Nothing that you send us will break us. We can scale with what you're looking for, and we can retain with what you're looking for as well. So I just wanted to get that aside there for you. One of the next things I want to touch on, because we've been talking a lot about data, but we haven't been talking about reporting on the Blumira site and what comes out of it. So that's a view for managers, that's a view for figuring out what's happening in the environment, that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of step through the whole process of looking at findings, then narrowing that down, then building a report, and then building a saved query, kind of, or saved report, just like you had just seen. So I'm going to look at all the findings over, let's say, the last 7 days for the Blumira organization. And by that, I mean the Blumira lab organization, just in case you think we're all crazy people. So this is what you're seeing out of here. And there's a number of data. You have analysis associated with it. You have the short ID. You have some interesting things, but what I'd really like to see inside of this is I'd like to build a daily report that tells me the amount of things that have happened by the name and the priority associated with those findings. Then I can come in and say, is there a pattern happening on a daily basis? Is something happening in my environment? I don't want to know necessarily some parts of it, but I want to know, and you can do status as well, but let's simplify this and do name and priority. And then we're going to group those. And then search again. So we're looking over the last 7 days. We can see there were 5 honeypot access and then 1 regsvr malicious DLL. So this is when we look for when regsvr 32 hooks into another DLL. And this is a pretty common use for droppers. And the anomalous honeypot, of course, is our honeypot detection. For those of you who are Blumira customers, I hope you're using a honeypot already. We provide them on our sensors. There's no additional cost. For those of you that aren't, I'm sure Patrick can talk to you about honeypots. He loves to talk about the honeypots. But
Honeypots.
they're always good things to
Yeah.
go over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a value add that most customers realistically don't have highly segmented or micro segmented networks, right?
Yep.
And so it's a good way to detect if someone's on your environment or your network by essentially providing a web page or FTP service or whatever to trigger maybe someone's trying to access something they shouldn't be, right?
Yep.
So, hey, someone did ask how much data is in that 8 months. I think you were running a query. I don't remember what it was.
In that one, so the Blumira lab account's one of our smaller accounts. There's about 300 gigs of data over that 8-month period, which is pretty small for us, all things considered, at this point. We have customers that store anywhere from, like I just said, around between 300 and 500 gigs of data a year, up to customers that store what would amount to probably something like 300 to 500 terabytes of data a year. So it varies heavily, and the data volume doesn't change the speed of that search, generally speaking. It changes how much compute is loaded to gather that data, but that's invisible for you, essentially. And what that does is that it ensures that quality of delivery for you and makes sure that you're getting what you want. Most of the time considerations so like length of time to get data come into like complexity of searching if you're using complex regex, stuff like that. It's not about volume, it's more about method, for lack of a better way to put it. So as you had just seen on there, I made that save search, the finding by type and priority. Now I'm going to make this schedule report, and I want to say I want it daily at 9 a.m. Eastern. So now every day at 9 a.m. I'll get reported on the last day of here are all the findings that came out of there. Here are the priorities. Here's the name of them. And that makes it really easy to come in here and say, all right, well, I know that they were there. Yep, here's my findings from yesterday. I'm going to go in here and look at what's going on and figure out how I can resolve that issue within the environment. This isn't a findings example necessarily, but it's a good example generally speaking. So it allows you to kind of flow through that process, build reports as necessary, even reports that are related to internal Blumira processes as well. Let's see, what time do we have?
Are there any saved search reporting for honeypot data?
I don't think there are saved searches. Generally speaking, I mean, we can add one, I suppose.
One thing I would say is honeypots, like we use Open Canary, Haroon, which we'll have a webinar in about a month with. It's not like they create a lot of noise. Like the whole purpose is you might get an alert. Like when you get an alert, there's usually a problem, right? And so it's something that kind of just sits there. In reality, like there's probably not a whole lot of data to report on them.
No, they aren't very interesting unless they're being hit with something usually.
And then you get an alert, right?
Yeah, the one that you just saw. This is one of our internal labs. So I have a process that triggers these every few hours because it makes me feel better as a person to see findings constantly for my own stuff. I'm a weird person. This is a good example of what they look like. And a single connection, so this is 15, but a single connection to your honeypot will result in a detection. That's just how they're built. So anything that touches that honeypot is considered a potential threat. So yeah, you can come through here and you can say, all right, well, I want to go and I want to at least start searching through that data. You can come in through here, you can select the honeypot, you can go through the process to look at that data. That definitely is doable. Otherwise, you get findings associated with detection because really the goal is to make it so you don't need to come in here and look at that data. The goal is to make it so when you get that finding or you get that report about that finding, you can come in here, get to that finding and say, all right, what do we need to do? What is it about? What's the evidence associated with it? I can see there were 15 from a single device. What's going on here is we want to make sure it's contained and straightforward for you and your organizations. Let's see, we have time for one more narrative, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And someone asked, and I think we should, this is just the scheduled reporting or global searches. Are there any default or suggested default reports that are auto-generated?
Yeah, that's the global searches is largely what those are. We're going to do over the next month or so, and we can do like a quick refresher as well at that point, because this is going to keep getting updated and get better for everyone. We're going to start breaking the global searches that you see here. I realize I'm doing hand movements, and no one can see what I'm doing. You can break out the global searches here to be more categorized and structured, so you can very quickly pick out like these are the important ones for PCI compliance. Right now, it's kind of a pick and choose. We want to make that easier for you. But yes, the global searches are considered like the default recommended right now, whereas the save searches are kind of like this is our organization, this is what we care about, here's what we've saved, here's what we care about, like the Sophos one I just created, that kind of thing.
Hey, I thought of a crazy idea while we're going through this stuff. Product idea. On the Azure, like there's some depth there, right? And we'll parse more over time. Yep. But it would be super cool in the product if we actually like allowed people to parse on their own, and then essentially we validate and approve it, so they do all the work for us. That's the kind of stuff we think about from an automation perspective, right? Is like, well, the force multiplier.
Sure.
Yeah, it could be cool. I don't know.
It's something that I'd love to do. It's one of those situations with like structured data like Azure, it's a good example that you've led into. Structured data like Azure, where it's sending like JSON, where it's structured as keys and values, it's pretty straightforward to do that, because then you can say, well, this key is that thing. But when you start talking about like Palo Alto data, stuff like that, then you talk about like parsing natural language almost to say like this is that and that is that. That's when things get crazy. And as Patrick has alluded to, as of last week, we support 107 types of different data. And that's only going to keep increasing as we move forward. So we love data. We have a team of people that work in parsing that have deep loves associated with that data.
Hey, we have 10 more minutes. I know you're going to show an example. But first, I just want to promote, if you're a customer and you like our product, you should give us a review on G2. We're at eight reviews right now. If we get to 10, we get on the chart for the fall, and I think we need to do it this week or next. So it's greatly appreciated. Just have to throw that out there. I threw a link in the chat. All reviews are appreciated. So
sure.
Little self-promotion, thanks everybody.
So I wanted to show this example because I think it's a nice example of data that isn't often seen. So this is Windows firewall data. And a lot of people shut off their Windows firewall. If you have them on, we have guides as to how to get data out of that firewall and shipped. We strongly recommend it if you have them enabled, because it gives you the ability to detect things that are within subnets, for example, so lateral movement within those subnets. It also just gives you another viewpoint of data, which is also super interesting. So I'm going to work through a narrative here, but I'll do it somewhat quickly. We only have a few minutes here. So we can see that this is the server, super secret stuff, very important server, that was being connected to over 3389. So it sees those RDP connections that are happening. Maybe they're landing, maybe they're not landing, but we can see that those connections are happening. So let's kind of work through the process here, because I know people did talk about investigation, using data to investigate. So let's narrow that down a little bit more and say, all right, we can see that there were a lot of connections from 3389. Maybe we can break this down a bit more even and say, all right, let's say, let's pull some columns out of here and say, well, let's look at the device name. Let's look at the IP. We know the port. Let's pull some of this stuff off of here real quick. Because what we want to do is we want to start to build a view as to where this data is coming from specifically, and start to be able to kind of determine if there's a pattern here. So we can see there were a ton of connections, and I know exactly what this is. If anyone has been in threat for a while, this is a data center in Europe. They almost all spamming and scanning comes out of this data center. It is horribly annoying. I recommend just basically blocking this entire /16 would be my recommendation. But as you can see, there was a ton of traffic on RDP hitting the server. Yes, the server is internet facing RDP, and it's like that on purpose. I'm not a crazy person, but it is like that on purpose. So you can see there's a ton of data here. Even in this is 30 days of data, so there was a lot of connections. So really what it comes down to now is, all right, so what is actually happening in this environment? Are people successfully logging in over RDP? So then we can go to this search. So this is the successful RDP login, and we're going to go over the same time frame. Oops. Reload that. There we go. So we're going to go over the same time frame, last 30 days. Yep, last month even. And we can see that there were only 2 successful RDP logins. So none of those connections were successful at connecting RDP. None of them were successful at getting into that machine. We can see that I was the only person that successfully got into here at that point on the super secret stuff device. And then we can start to feel a little more comfortable, like, all right, we know that no one got into the machine. We know there were connections from it. We only knew about it because of the Windows firewall. Let's say it was on the DMC and someone accidentally left RDP open and you didn't have anything acting as a gateway. Maybe it was in Azure and it was just facing the internet and RDP was facing the internet. This gives you that ability to get that data and then see, all right, we can see that RDP is connected to. And I will also say this right here, this would trigger a detection inside of Blumira, because what we're seeing here is a public IP RDPing into a machine. And we consider that a low priority 3 threat within an environment at this point of, you're allowing someone to RDP into your environment, a machine was successfully RDP'd into from a public IP, something not right is probably happening. Now, there are situations where this needs to happen. However, we consider that a potential threat when we see that situation. So we can see that there was some attacks against the server probably. We can see that no one successfully logged in. So let's now look at the actual failed user login. So we want to see kind of what happened over that time period. So we were looking at last month. And start to kind of bring some context to what kind of failures we're seeing. What's the volume that we were seeing in regard to those failures? And when you pull this up, you can start to see the insane number of volume that we're seeing. So we saw almost 60,000 attempts over that month to log into administrator, 300 for administrator. And then you start getting into these really deep kind of information of what people are trying to get into. Free RDP, HR. So people are trying to brute force this machine constantly. But we know, because of that saved RDP report, we know that no one successfully was able to get into that machine. And you could, of course, turn this into a scheduled report. You could turn this into any sort of process that works best for you and your organization, that works best for you realistically. And I know we don't have any more time left, so I'm just going to touch on a few other things real quick. I do recommend, if you are a Blumira customer or when you start a POC, testing out or looking at these global queries. There are a number of them, like SSH FTP from internet, FTP from internet, any firewall IPS actions, making sure that you can get the information you want, need, and GFW by source user if you have user ident on those IPS and IDS that you have in your environments, top allowed targets, that kind of thing. These are helpful sets of data that we generally recommend taking a look at building reports for some of these data sets get populated into the security dashboard, for example. This is a lab account, so it's going to get populated in a weird way, pre-warning. But like SMB brute force, we can see as the top block threat. That kind of information all gets loaded into these global searches, and it allows you to kind of start bringing them up, start pivoting off of them, start figuring out, all right, how's this happening? What's happening in my environment? How can I work through this? You'll get findings for things that are proper threats, but that doesn't mean that there isn't reasons that you might want to investigate data. You might want to look at what's going on in that environment. You might want to say, all right, well, I got that. I want to look at the source IP and then the destination IP for these and figure out where those brute forces are coming from, where they're happening, why this is happening. It may be a false positive, as all of us know, IPSs are completely insane, but it makes it more straightforward and robust for you and your organization. I'll stop rambling now.
Hey, so no, this has been great. A few things I want to mention just at the top of the hour, right? So if you're an existing customer, have any questions about the reporting, make sure if you're using Chrome or Edge, I learned
Firefox
Safari,
works.
yeah, or Firefox. Safari, you might run into issues from a UI perspective. You know, the other thing is if there's any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to our team from a support button perspective. If you want to get your hands on the product and you're not an existing customer today, feel free to just inquire for a demo or contact sales on our website. And then the other thing, just exciting highlight, we're starting up a security advisor series on a weekly basis on Thursdays. In 2 weeks from today, we have CMMC as the topic. And we'll be talking with Ryan Bonner, who's a lead consultant as it relates to CMMC and working with the federal government. And then Sean Frazier from Duo, CISO advisor for federal government, and has worked a lot on Zero Trust with some of the new NIST framework that's come out recently. So it should be fun. We do have Haroon from Canary or Thinks coming on related to Honeypots, so that should be fun, and a bunch of other people. So look forward to seeing everyone on those future things. And then from a product perspective, right, if you have any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out. We love your feedback. That's how we build the product, and reiterate and really want to make useful products for our customers. So it's been great today. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. You're welcome.
What are you gonna do the rest of the day?
Work.
I know. It's been so busy. I don't know. I'm looking forward. Tomorrow I'm took a few hours off to play frisbee golf in the morning. So yeah, it's kind of that work. It's a good good time right now. Thanks everybody. Thanks for our customers. We love working with you and enjoy having you. Don't forget to write a review on g2.com if you love the product.
Please.
And take care.
Yeah, have a great one, everyone.
Later. Good job. Stop recording. Stop.